Good morning, Journey Church. Thankful for our pastor and for his wife. Thankful this opportunity. They get to just unplug a little bit, rest up. They're not just, sun-tanning themselves in Florida. They are ministering with other pastors in the area that they don't normally get to connect with. They're just spending time downloading from God the vision for the next chapter of where God's leading our church. We're excited for them to come back, share that vision with us, and we're in for a ride. God's going to do some amazing things throughout the rest of this year and into next year, and we're going to be ready for it. And this sabbatical is a huge part of that. Thank you so much for just giving them the space to do that. We've seen our deacons be able to step up and serve in even more powerful ways. They're a blessing to so many of us here. Thankful for them. Can we actually give our deacons a round of applause? So good. So, oh man, I'll tell you what, I had a dream last night that I forgot to print out some notes for what I was going to say. I forgot to bring some of the things I want to show you today. And it was so stressful. Like, if you have a weird dream that's like just weirdness going on, like you're flying on a marshmallow, I don't know, like that doesn't stress me out because it's like, well, that's ridiculous. But you know those dreams where like you forget something you need to remember? That's real stress because that could happen. Some of you are like, Mike, I live that nightmare every day. So I get it. And honestly, even in my dream, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be talking about don't forget. I guess that's my sermon illustration. I forgot everything I'm going to tell you. And so when I woke up, I realized it was just a dream. I was like, well, there goes a perfectly good opening illustration. But here we are. But on that note, who can remember where we last left off with Joshua and the Israelites? Anybody remember? Pop quiz. It's early. Crossing the Jordan River. One person remembered, everyone else was living that nightmare of I forgot. You're like, I don't even remember what I had for dinner last night. I was not prepared for this quiz. That's fair. It's okay because we forget. Like it's just part of our human fallen brains. We just forget things. It's okay. That's part of life. And so, in light of that, let's catch up with where we're at right now. Okay, so when we last left the Israelites being led by Joshua, they were for a while stuck at this impossible boundary of the Jordan River, which is the border between where they were and the land God had promised them. It was overflowing in flood season. It was impassable and impossible. And so when we last saw them, God told them to take a risky step. Remember, we had the Levites, they carried the Ark of the Covenant first. God's presence went first into the river, and then the water stopped. They were able to cross over on dry land. And it was amazing. It was awesome. And can you imagine that the first people across were probably like, all right, we made it. Let's do this. Because there were probably 2 or 3 million people. That's going to take a minute to get across the river, even in the perfect conditions. It's just going to take a while. So you've probably got the people who are across first being like, all right, so how about we just send our strongest like warriors and stuff forward? Jericho's right there. We know they're terrified of us. They know that we're coming. Let's just go in and move in now. The women and the children, the older folks, they can come in on their own time. Let's just go and then we'll have a place to land. Let's just do that, right? That makes sense. Wouldn't you think that? Like that's reasonable. Like, great, God did this amazing thing. Let's keep the momentum going. Let's go. That's goal thinking. And as we've been saying, the goal is not the goal. What's the goal? The process is the goal. Can you believe we're still having to say that? Can you believe we did this Joshua study? We started, I don't know how many weeks ago, and now we're in Joshua chapter 4, and we're still not at the Battle of Jericho. We're still having to say the goal is not the goal, the process is the goal. We're still having to say that because God is more interested in the process of getting you to where he wants you to be, rather than you just being where he wants you to be. God's more interested in the process of getting to the promised land, so to speak, than he is in just you living and being in the promised land. Because, here's the thing, it's more important than us doing something for God is us being people of God. Right, more important than whatever God wants us to do, it's more important that we are who God wants us to be. And that's the process. Now, do God's people do things? Absolutely. God's people should do things because that's the outpouring of our faith. It's the outpouring of our relationship with God, right? He loves us and he's done so much for us. He forgives us. He empowers us. We trust him. We have faith in him. And so, because we have the faith, like James says, you have to show it by your works. So you do something. God's people always have to do something, but it's not about the thing that they're doing. It's so that through the doing process, they can become more like Jesus, so that we can become more like Jesus and help others do the same. That's the process. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing. Well, that was just a review, all right? But we need to keep hearing. And then so it's crazy to think that we're still here, and God, we overcame the most impossible obstacle of getting past the Jordan River. I don't know what that looks like in your life. Maybe you're not crossed that river in your life yet. Maybe God's brought you through something already. But just because we're through that doesn't mean now, right now, full steam ahead, because God has more process for us. And it's hard to believe sometimes, but that's the way it goes. Through the process of doing the thing that we become more like the people God wants us to be. So let's see what God wants us to be here as we read Joshua chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. I'll read this. That's Joshua chapter 1. We don't need to go back that far. Chapter 4, verse 1. When all the people had crossed the Jordan. All right, so we're all across. The Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you'll camp tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, go to the middle of the Jordan, in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. We'll use these stones to build a memorial. Why? Why after all this, when God brings you through something, you get a great win, don't forget to not forget. Remember to remember. Because we so easily forget. Life is going to go on, and so build a memorial while you're there. Build a memorial, and we're going to talk about what this means. Build a memorial, like make something, paint something, write something, do something, make a memorial so that you can remember what God did here. Why? Because life is going to go on, life is going to come up, you're going to go through life as normal, and Satan is going to want to try to minimize the impact in your mind of what God did in the past. That's what he's trying to do. Why? Because remembering what God did is how you build your faith for the next obstacle. That's why Satan does not want you to remember what God did in the past, because he knows that when you have something that you can look at, something that you can touch, you can remember, yes, that's when God showed up. I remember that, and God did it. He can do it again. I'm going to remember this. Satan doesn't want you to do that because he wants you to forget that, so that when you arrive at the next obstacle, when you arrive at the next flooded river in your life, you're like, oh no, what are we going to do? How are we going to get across this? God, why'd you bring us here? Don't think it can't happen to you. I know you're going to say like, oh man, God did, like when God does something amazing, you'll be like, I'm never going to forget this. You want to make sure that you don't forget this? Build a memorial. Remembering what God did is how you build your faith for the next obstacle. Let me ask you a question, a very serious question. What has God done in your life? Think about that for a minute. Like for real, just what has God done in your life? That's awesome. Specifically, what was the time that God's done something in your life? I know Daniel's seen it in his life. Because here's the thing, if right now you're thinking, God's been good. I got a good family. I got a nice job. I got a nice home to live in. Yeah, God's been good. If that's the most you can think of right now, then what happens when something happens to that home or that family or that job? What do you got? What do you got then? What are you going to stand on? What are you going to hold to? Because if you can't remember specifically a time that God showed up in your life, he did something that only he could do, only he could take credit for. He provided in a way that doesn't make any sense. He brought healing in a way that only he can do. We have to remember these types of things. If it's vague, if it's not specific, then it's not going to hold water when the trials come through the next time. How has God shown up in your life? I got something I want to show you. That's kind of a bit of a memorial that I have. We have a couple of things around our house that kind of remind us of what God's done in the past. I just grabbed this one because this, I think, has the most memories. This is a jar full of like little trinkets and some stones and stuff that remind us and my family of a time that we led a small group at a church a number of years ago. And God did so much in and through those people in that small group. It really meant a lot to us that when it came time for us to move on, God was having us actually move up here to New Hampshire. We realized we don't want to forget what God did in this group. And so everyone got a jar like this and filled it up with little things to remind ourselves of what God had done. So, I look at this jar and I think of Rhonda, who was stuck in this toxic just abusive job. And she was praying, and we were praying with her for God to just give her a job, another job offer that she could go to so she could quit this job. But the more we prayed, the more we realized God wasn't going to give her a job first. He was going to challenge her to jump and trust him and leave that job even though she didn't know exactly what she was going to jump to. That's a scary step. We prayed with her through that, and she took that step. She took that leap, not knowing where a net was going to be to catch her, and God caught her. After she quit that job without knowing where she's going to go, God provided her a great job in another state, the perfect job for her. We're thankful for that. We remember that. I look at this and I think of Kai Young. He was a university student, and he was a Buddhist, and he was an atheist. And he came to the group because he was actually friends with Mike Nelson, who was a respected scientist and a Christian. And Kai Young was curious, how do you believe in Jesus and trust science at the same time? Didn't make any sense to him. So he hung out with Mike. Mike said, "Come to the group. We study the Bible there. You should probably check it out and see what there is to say about it." He came, and he ended up following Jesus and giving his life to Jesus. It's amazing. That's good. Yeah, you can clap for that. Not everything was all, fun and awesome like that. There was a time we prayed for Scarlett. Scarlett's dad went through a long battle with brain cancer. And we prayed, and God didn't answer our prayers the way that we hoped he would, but we saw God give that family strength and peace and testimony above and beyond anything that made sense. And so even though her dad went to go live and be healed ultimately with Jesus, we saw God do some amazing things in that family. And I look at this and I think of not one, but two young men who are no longer with us, who are part of that group. One, Travis, he was very gifted as a chef, and he was learning and growing in that. And he would often bring treats that he had made from the kitchen to our group that we could enjoy. That was always a good day. But for real, one night he fell asleep at the wheel and he drove off a bridge. And we had to remember how life it is not promised to us. It's a gift. It can be shorter than we expect, but God's good. I also think of Josh, who was an ambulance driver, and he succumbed to COVID a couple of years ago. And his mom will still say that this group was the first and the only place that Josh felt like he had friends and that people were kind to him. And God did so much in and through that group. We don't want to forget this. So we made this memorial Because remembering what God did is how you build your faith for the next obstacle. It's how you build your faith for the next time. We can look back and see, yeah, we can't deny the fact that God did all these things. In fact, these stones in here, these are little prayer requests from that group that we wrote little prayer requests and answers on these little stones. I don't know if you can see the writing on them. They're little, but we wrote them. And I wish we had kept more of them, because the more rocks we have showing us this is what we prayed for and this is what God did, the more faith we can build in God, seeing what he's done in the past, knowing he can do it in the future. Remembering what God did is how you build your life for the next obstacle, is how you build your faith for the next obstacle. But that's not all. Let's keep reading in Joshua chapter 4. Here in verse 9, Joshua also set up another pile of 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan at the place where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing, and they're there to this day. Meanwhile, the people hurried across the riverbed, and when everyone was safely on the other side, the priests crossed over with the Ark of the Lord as the people watched. Okay, I've known this story for a while. Read this story here in the Bible before. I never noticed that Joshua made a second memorial. I knew about the first memorial, the 12 stones, one from each tribe. I knew about that. I'd never really caught the fact that Joshua set up another memorial. And did you catch where he set it up? He set it up in the middle of the river. Like, you know what's going to happen, right? Like, yeah, the Ark of the Covenant's there. You got a couple people carrying it. It's in the middle of the river. In just a minute, those people are going to move. God's going to let the water keep flowing. It's going to go back to its flood stage. You're not going to see this memorial. What good is that doing? Why this memorial here in this place now? Okay, another story. It feels like it's story time with Mike here today. One morning about 10 years ago, almost to the day, I woke up with a splitting headache. And normally I try to go back to sleep and sleep it off. But this morning in particular, I was in a hotel in Philadelphia and I had to fly home that day. So I stumbled out of bed. I went down to the lobby. Fortunately, I was traveling with two other guys in my improv team, so I didn't have to drive to the airport. But they drove to the airport, and I stumbled through checking in, security, and I'm just like, oh man, that's not good. And finally got through to the gate, and I was able to just kind of collapse in one of the chairs at the gate. And I just conked out. And the other two guys I was traveling with, they said afterwards that people were walking by me with looks of either concern or judgment, or maybe both, because they just see me sprawled like this, and they're like, "What? It is 6 a.m. How is this guy so drunk out of his mind already? What is up with this guy?" It was not in good shape. But I made it home, got home, and when I got home, I went straight to bed, tried to sleep it off. It wouldn't go away. A few hours later, I came back out to see Kelsey, and she said, "Wait, hold on. Wait, look at me." I'm like, "Huh?" She said, "Look, open your eyes." I'm like, well, I am. She said, "That's as wide as your eyes can open?" I'm like, I guess so. What? And I'm like, oh. This eyelid wouldn't even go up anymore. She's like, "That's not good. I'm going to take you to the emergency room right now." So we go to the emergency room, and there they run a few tests, and they come back. They say, it's kind of tough to tell what the tests that we have, but based on what we're seeing, it could be bacterial meningitis. Yeah, so we need to get you to the emergency room right away. And we're like, "Well, I thought we were in the emergency room." And they're like, "No, this is urgent care. You came to urgent care." We're like, "I don't know how this works. I've never been to the emergency room before." So they're like, "I'm not even going to send you to drive to the hospital. We're going to put you in an ambulance." So I got a nice little ambulance ride. I don't remember it. I wish I could, but I don't. But we got an ambulance ride to the real emergency room where they ran more tests, and they said, "Okay, it's not bacterial meningitis," which is good, because bacterial meningitis can kill you in a matter of hours. They said, "But it's a pituitary tumor." Oh. It's a rough day when a tumor is the good news. So they say it's not bacterial meningitis, but it is a tumor. It's still an emergency, so we're going to have to get him into surgery. And this is where God started lining things up. It just so happened that this hospital was where the nation's leading pituitary tumor surgeon operated, and she had an available slot within 24 hours. Praise God. So they got me ready to be able to go into the surgery. So Kelsey, in the meantime, she was like, all right, this could take a while. She went home. She packed an overnight bag. She called some friends and family to tell them the news and the updates. And then she had pretty much done everything that she could do. So they had me in a bed in a room just to kind of wait until another surgery prep room became available. Waiting in that room, Kelsey was like, she's done all she can do. A nurse came in, and Kelsey describes her as a tall, gorgeous African woman with white scrubs. Came in, she tweaked a little bit on my IV, and she came over to Kelsey and she said, "Baby, he's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be fine." And she just felt like Kelsey just felt at peace, like instantly, just like, yeah, it is gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine. And so the nurse said, so they're going to have to move him to another room here in a little bit. I see you brought an overnight bag. Can I take that bag for you? I'll keep it behind the nurse's station, and when you need it, you can just get it there, but you don't have to worry about it as you might have to move to different rooms. Is that okay? And Kelsey said, yeah, that's fine. Okay. So she takes the bag out, and some other nurses come in, and they move me to another room. But Kelsey was just so affected by that nurse's encouragement of he's going to be okay, that as Kelsey was waiting, as I was getting prepped, her brother actually came in and to check on her, expecting to find her, crying and upset, and he found her asleep in the waiting room. She was so at peace. It's like Jesus asleep in the bottom of the boat when there's a storm coming. When you trust God, the Bible says God gives you a peace that surpasses understanding. That's just some old-fashioned term for meaning it's peace that doesn't make any sense. Why would you have peace in that situation? That doesn't make any sense. But it's because when you trust God, you can have this peace that doesn't even make sense. You shouldn't have peace in this situation, but yet you do, and that comes from God. And Kelsey experienced that. Didn't you? Where are you? Didn't you even go up to the roof to pray, read a Bible? How'd you get to the hospital roof? I don't know. You have a picture of it of on the hospital. I don't know how you got to the hospital roof. That's usually off limits. I don't know how that happened. That's a gap in my memory there. But on the roof, praying, reading the Bible, just being at peace, like God's got this. Okay, so the surgery went well. Just like the nurse said, I was fine. The surgery was a success, but they had to put me into the ICU for 2 nights. That was just protocol for that surgery. Pituitary tumor removal, you're going to have to be monitored because it's delicate brain stuff, monitored in the ICU for 2 nights. And so there I was, and when we realized, okay, this is going to be a longer thing, time to go get that overnight bag. Kelsey went back to that nurse's station. The nurse that she talked to wasn't there, but there were 2 other nurses there. And she said, hey, I got a bag back behind the nurse's station. I was wondering if I can come grab that now. They're like, we don't have a bag back here. She's like, well, she explained the situation of the nurse from earlier and that it was here. And they said, wait a minute, what? Describe that nurse? Can you describe who talked to you? And she said, yeah, she's tall, she's black, she's really pretty, she had white scrubs, I don't know. And they're like, no one on the staff fits that description. And Kelsey's like, okay, well, can you just check on my bag? Because she said it would be back there. They're like, okay, we'll check. So they check a room behind the nurse's station, and sure enough, they come rolling out a bag. Is this your bag? Yep, that's my bag. And then she was on her way. We were telling this story to our small group that I mentioned earlier, and Scarlett, who I mentioned, her dad was going through brain cancer at that time. Scarlett was in that hospital, in that wing, all the time because her dad was being treated at that hospital. She said, wait, what color scrubs did you say she was wearing? Kelsey's like, she was wearing white scrubs. And she said, yeah, that's impossible. First of all, I know all of the nurses on that floor. I'm there every day. I know all the nurses. First of all, no one fits that description. Second of all, the nurses at that hospital wear color-coded scrubs. So everyone on that floor, on the brain ICU unit, They all wear green scrubs. It's a security thing. So like you can't show up to another floor without the right color scrub. So everyone there wears green. In fact, I don't think anyone in the hospital wears white scrubs. I've never seen that before. So we believe, if you haven't caught on yet, that we believe that God sent an angel to bring peace to Kelsey in the situation. Isn't that beautiful? And it's just a testimony to see what God has done to be able to bring peace in a situation that there should not, in a normal worldly sense, be any peace. And like the angel said, everything was fine. The surgery went great. I got out of the hospital, but there were still two impassable obstacles ahead of us. First of all, everyone who has this pituitary tumor surgery, everyone who has that surgery, especially after a tumor of the size I had, like that, everyone has to have hormone replacement therapy. You have to have a daily pill to replace the hormones that the now damaged pituitary gland can no longer produce, right? And so after I got out of the hospital, I got my tests and to test the hormone levels, see what we're dealing with. The endocrinologist got the results back. He called me back in to discuss the results, and he said, I have been working with this surgery, with this tumor, for a long time. I have been working with your surgeon for a long time, and this is the first time I've ever been able to say, your test results are perfect, you don't need to take a pill, and you don't need to see me again. So, and as if just to prove it, they sent me a letter with my test results. There's my hormone levels. It says your testosterone and growth hormone look perfect. Signed, Dr. Vaughn. So like, that's it. That's all we got. The second thing, the second impassable obstacle that we had was, even though now medically speaking, is as if this surgery never happened. Like I was fine, the hormone levels were back to normal. Medically, I was back to normal. Financially, though, was a different story because, listen, we had no health insurance. Zero health insurance. Do you want to know what paying for brain surgery out of pocket looks like? How about this? I got this bill. This is the bill just from the hospital for the surgery and for the ICU stay. To the total of $53,068.04. Thanks. Couldn't even give me a solid and just make it even, huh? All right. And that is just for the hospital stay. When you include the ambulance ride, and I say as if I bought a ticket for it, and the ambulance ride, I guess, the tests, the scans, all those things, the total that we owed this hospital was close to $70,000. For us, that was an impossible obstacle. There was no way that we were going to just, be able to move on from that. So we applied for some financial aid through the hospital, hoping to try to get that number down a little bit and maybe work out some payment plans so we weren't crushed for the rest of our life. Well, a couple weeks later, we got back a letter from the financial aid saying that we've received and processed your application for financial assistance. Based on the information you presented to our office, your financial assistance eligibility determination is approved. Praise God, that's awesome. Full discount on charges after copayment. That's 100% of the bill. After a copayment of $35. So $35 later, it was as if this never happened. I think they even covered the 4 cents. If they send me another bill, I can pay that. I'll take care of that. It was as if it never happened. Now, God did some amazing things that month. He deserves better than for me to forget that it ever happened. So I kept these papers as a memorial. I kept these papers as a reminder of what God did. Now, Joshua, remember this? Joshua set up a memorial in the middle of the river. This is not the 12 stones by the 12 volunteers who are going to carry them over and set a memorial over there. We're going to build that memorial in just a minute, okay? Joshua takes it upon himself to build a memorial in the middle of the river. In just a few minutes, the water's going to come and cover it up. No one's ever going to see it again. Why? Because there was going to be every once in a while an opportunity to see that memorial. In the drought season, when there's no rain, when life is a little hard, when it's tough to get by, when we doubt God's goodness, when we doubt God's provision, when life's a little bit scary, when we have nothing saved up, nothing else to rely on, that's when you could see this memorial. And so the memorial is not just about to remember what God did. The memorial here in the drought season is to remember of what God can do. It's not just about remembering what God did, it's about remembering what God can do. And so I can look at these as a memorial in the drought season. When I'm sick, when someone in my family is sick, I can look at this and say, God is a healer. Not only I remember when God healed me, but God is a healer and he can do it again. Financially speaking, I'm going to be honest with you, we've never had a steady, predictable stream of income. We've had flood seasons, we've had drought seasons, and to be perfectly honest, it seems like there's more droughts than not. And some of them are long and hard. And in those seasons, I can look at this and say, it doesn't matter how many digits are in front of the decimal point, God is a provider. Not just that he provided this once, amen, that was awesome, but that he is a provider and he can do it again, and he's not fazed by numbers, he's not fazed by bank accounts or bills. In the drought season, when I look around and I'm like, what am I going to do? That's when that memorial shows up. I can look at that and say, I not only remember what God did, I remember who God is and what he can do in the future. Build a memorial. But the memorial isn't just for me. Let's keep reading. Check this out. Here in Joshua 4, starting in verse 16. Command the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant to come up out of the riverbed. So Joshua gave the command. As soon as the priests carrying the Ark of the Lord's Covenant came up out of the riverbed and their feet were on high ground, the water of the Jordan returned and overflowed its banks as before. So hold on. By the way, did you catch this? Remember, God was the first one. And remember last time we had the Ark of the Covenant here? We got to see, like, that is the symbol of the Lord's presence. He was the first one into the river, and now he's the last one out. He goes in front of you. He goes before you, and he comes behind you, taking up the rear. Don't you dare feel like you're going on this journey alone or in your own strength. He goes in front of you, and he comes behind you. He's the first one in. He's the last one out of your whatever you're going through. Amen? All right, that was just a bonus sermon. The people crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. Then they camped at Gilgal, just east of Jericho. It was there at Gilgal that Joshua piled up the 12 stones taken from the Jordan River. And then Joshua said to the Israelites, listen to this, in the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, this is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before your eyes, and he kept it dry until you were all across, just as he did at the Red Sea when he dried it up until we had all crossed over. He did this so that all the nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, and so that you might fear the Lord your God forever. The memorial wasn't just there for those who experienced the miracle. The memorial was there as a conversation starter for people who needed to believe in something that they didn't see. It's not just about you and remembering what God did and what he can do. It's so that it can be a conversation starter so that other people can see this physical thing. They can't see in your mind. They can't see your memories, but they can see this physical thing. Like, what's that about? And you can tell them what God did. And you can help not only build your faith, but build their faith as well. This is your physical testimony. Your testimony doesn't just have to live in here. This is your physical testimony. This is a conversation starter. On your desk at work, one of your coworkers could walk by. Well, hey, what's that thing? It's like, oh man, that's a great story. Let me tell you what God did. You have this thing on the shelf. So you got a kid like, Daddy, what is that thing? What's that? And like, oh, sweetie, let me tell you, God has been good to us, and that just helps me to not forget what God has done in our life. It's a physical reminder. It's a physical testimony. It's a conversation starter. Because here's the thing, memories, they store feelings, but memorials build faith. Memories are good. Have your memories. But your memories store these feelings. I remember that back then. That made me feel good. I remember that then. That made me feel bad. But memorials are like, no, see? I remember what God did, and I know that he can do it again. That builds faith. Because if you're going through something now in the present, and you're like, oh boy, I don't know. You're worried, you have anxiety, you're feeling upset and lost. What are you going to try to do? Rely on your memories back then of how you felt back then and try to like, well, I felt good back then. Maybe I can start to feel that now. Hopefully that works. I don't think that's going to work. Those feelings back then are weaker, way weaker in the distance than what you're feeling right now, which is bad, which is in turmoil, which is stress and anxiety and worry. These are way stronger feelings now than any memories you have. But if you can stand here and you can look at that, no, this is what God did. You can build that faith that's stronger than those memories, that's stronger than those feelings of whatever God did in the past. So, make it physical. You have a physical memorial of what God did. You don't have to fight feelings with feelings. You fight feelings with faith in what God did. And you can have a physical representation of that. You have something you can point to and you can say, it doesn't matter how I feel now. I only have this because God showed up and he can show up again. So make it physical. It's not just here in Joshua that we see this. In 1 Samuel chapter 7, we see the Israelites fighting the Philistines. In fact, they're not fighting the Philistines. God single-handedly fights the Philistines and defeats them. Israel just has to watch. And Samuel is the prophet leader at that time, and he said, whoa, God just showed up and helped us. And so he set up a stone memorial, and he called it Ebenezer, which means in that language, stone of help. And he said, up to this point, God has helped us. That's all the faith that we need to have a memorial. Is like, up to this point, God has helped us. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I can look at this memorial and say, up to this point, God has helped me. If I still have faith in him, I believe he can be with me and help me in the future. But up to this point, he's helped me, and I know that. Putting a rock right in the sand right there for that one to remember. Up to this point, boom. God's been with me and God's helped me. We also see it in Genesis 28. Jacob was sleeping. He had a dream. God gave him a vision of this ladder coming down from heaven. And God gave him this promise that I'm going to make you a great nation, just like I promised your father and his father. You're going to be a great nation, and they're going to be my people. And I'm going to take care of them and give them a land. The land that you're sleeping on is going to be their land that they're going to live in. Hello, fast forward to what we're talking about right now. God is the God of the promise. When Jacob woke up from that, he said, apparently, God dwells here, and I didn't even know it. So he put a stone, called it Bethel, the house of God is what that means. He's like, I've been in God's house here, and I didn't even know. Do you have a memorial for a time when you were like, okay, God showed up here. God was here already working. I didn't even know it. He just let me see it, and I don't want to forget that I saw what I saw because I know God is taking care of me and he's with me, and I'm in his presence now. Do you have something like that? We don't even have to just talk about Old Testament references. We can talk about something in the New Testament. You want a New Testament example of a memorial? You came in, you walked in, and you grabbed one this morning. I'm going to go grab one right now. Communion is a memorial. It's a memorial that Jesus set up. It's a memorial that he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something that's going to change your life. I know you think you're not going to forget it. I just want to make sure that you don't. Because I gave up a whole lot for this. I don't want you to forget it. So we have this. This communion is a memorial to remember what Jesus did for us and what it meant. And just like Joshua said to the people with that memorial, he said, let it be a conversation starter. Maybe you've got a kid next to you saying, oh, is it snack time? No, sweetie, it's not snack time. Actually, what we do here is we just take this to remember the bread and the juice. We're not taking it because we're hungry. We're taking it because Jesus sacrificed his body for us. He died so that we don't have to be punished like he was. It's a great conversation starter. You might be here. You might not be a Christian. You might not believe everything that we're talking about here today. That's fine. I'm glad you're here. But you might know about communion. You're like, so yeah, what's the deal with the communion? Is it like to, make God happy, something you do to make him happy? No, it's not about making God happy. Not about making him love us anymore, because I got to tell you, he loves you more than you could possibly know. Nothing you can do to make him love you more or less. So it's not about that. It's about we Christians, we believers here, remember that Jesus made it possible for us to be able to spend our eternity with a holy God who loves us and not have to spend eternity with Satan, who spends his entire existence hating us and trying to destroy us. He made a way for us to live with God. And that's what we remember when we do this. So can we observe this memorial together right now? If you open up that first little flap there, you can get that bread. So Jesus, on that night that he was betrayed, he had his disciples around him, and he took a loaf of bread and he said, this bread, this represents my body. Take it, eat it, remember me. Then he took a cup and he said, this cup, this represents my blood, which is going to be poured out for you. When you drink it, will you remember me? After they ate together, they sung a hymn. And so, in the spirit of remembering what God did, we're going to do that too. And in fact, I've invited Cheryl and Mike to lead us in this hymn. But before we do that, can I talk about hymns here for a minute? With hymns, I know there's some people here who love hymns. There's some people here who think that hymns are boring. If I never sang a hymn, I would be okay. And first of all, let's just say it's a matter of preference, and we're going to give each other grace in our preferences. Fair enough? But let me talk about hymns for a minute, because there's something bigger in play than just preferences here and there. We live in a culture that says if it's new, it's progressive. If it's old, it's irrelevant. If it's unchanged, well, then it must be stagnant. And so we have this culture that celebrates something new just for being new and disregards something as old just because it's old, and we say that it's irrelevant, it doesn't apply anymore. So we're redoing movies that are only 20 years old. We don't read books from the 1990s because we look at the cover and the graphic design is a little bit off and weird looking, let alone whatever is inside. We disregard these things and just say, well, those are old or irrelevant because time changes, time goes on, right? We as a culture evolve, and now we live in a more modern time where people back then, they didn't know the things that we know now, but now we know the things so we can be progressive. We have new technology, we have new understanding, and so anything that's new is relevant to us now. Anything that's old, that just doesn't matter anymore. That's just kind of irrelevant now. And why why does this matter? Satan is just crafting this culture in this way. Why? Because if he can get a culture that says new equals progressive and good, old equals irrelevant and bad, unchanged means stagnant. If he can get this culture to think this way, it's not about the movies. It's not about the books. It's not about the music. His end game, his goal, this book right here, is thousands of years old. And the message of this book is unchanged that entire time. But it spells his death sentence. He knows that. The Bible says of itself, it is living and active. Does that sound old and irrelevant? No. So, if we can get a culture that says old equals irrelevant and unchanged equals stale and stagnant, then we can have a culture, he can have a culture, that says this book is dead. And he certainly does not want anyone interacting with this in any meaningful way because he knows it means the end of him. So he's going to craft this culture that says, we've moved on. We've progressed as a society. That was written a long time ago. People, they didn't know this culture that we're in today. Every generation learns a thing or two about wisdom, about how the world works. Every generation, thousands of years back, learns a thing or two about how life works best. Okay? Now, so those people in past generations, they write it down. They memorialize it in their writings, in their songs, and what they do. So if we were able to respect and honor that and accumulate that and collect it, can you imagine how much collective wisdom we could have over generations, over millennia of human experience and wisdom and the Spirit of God working through all those people all over time? That would be incredible. But instead, what Satan does is he kind of divides up these generations. Generation X, Generation Y, Gen Z, Millennials, Baby Boomers, so on and so forth, all the way back, and says, okay. Now, you see this generation over here, that's kind of past right now. They don't really know what it's like to be in this generation here. So anything that they say, anything they come up with, take it with a grain of salt, right? Like, it's okay. They just don't get it. Not to mention going back hundreds and thousands of years to what was written by church leaders, not to mention anything that was written thousands of years ago. Satan divides these generations so we don't communicate with each other and we don't take the wisdom from past generations. Because that would be dangerous for him. He wants us to dismiss all that. So, hymns were written a long time ago. In a time, honestly, when it wasn't about making albums. It wasn't about trying to get a song and push it to the top 10 of the Christian billboards. It was just an outpouring of the writer's heart, experiencing what God was doing in and through their life. And they wrote it down. Are all the hymns good? No. Just like all the songs that are written nowadays aren't good just because they're new, not everything that's old is good either. But these hymns that have stood the test of time, that we still know today, there's a reason for that. And that's because they're just the outpouring of what God was doing in someone's heart. They wrote it down and God preserved this and said, hey, this is a good message. This points back to what I teach in the Bible. This points to truth. This points to something good. Remember this. So I've asked them to lead us in a song, a specific hymn called When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. This cross is itself a memorial, right? Like, that's why we have one way up on the wall there. That's why we rescued this one from our original location on Milton Road, from our first building that we had as The Journey. We actually saved this as part of our 20th anniversary that we celebrated a few weeks ago, which itself was a memorial of what God has done in the past 20 years here at Journey Church. Now, we don't worship this thing. It's not an idol, but it's a memorial that we can look at. And when we sing this song, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, when I look at, survey means like look at, thoughtfully consider. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain, the thing that I'm most proud of in life, the things that I've accomplished, the things that I've gained the most, even the most valuable things in my life, I count as loss. I say they're nothing compared to what I see here. And the song goes on to say, and all of my pride that I feel, feeling like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm doing pretty good. I must be something because God saved me. I must be doing something right because God's using me. I pour contempt on that. I said, I would rather hate anything good about me or my life if it means that I can compare it to Jesus and recognize that he is the Prince of Glory and he has done everything for me. Let's think about these things as they lead this hymn together.